In this video, I want to discuss some of the structures of the larynx model we have been looking at, the larger larynx model, and I have a smaller one that I'll pull out so we can see some of the other structures a little bit better. And in this particular model, it does a great job of showing the hyoid bone and some of the structures that are a little clearer on here. First thing we want to discuss is we come down the larynx here, or as you know, the vocal cords or the voice box. We have this very large structure comprised of hyaline cartilage here, and this is the thyroid cartilage of the larynx, in which has this prominence, the prominence here, the laryngeal prominence that sticks out very prominently in males in the Adam's apple. Here underneath that you will find another set of cartilages here called the cricoid cartilage that will continue around posteriorly on this model, and we can see that here, cricoid cartilage. One last thing I want to discuss is the cartilages of the trachea as it continues down the cartilaginous rings. Note their structure is more C-shaped, or they end at the posterior aspect of the larynx. Everything else that you can continue to see is better seen posteriorly on this model. And the first structure I want to talk about is the covering of the glottis, the epiglottis. As we run down here to the glottis, and you can see as the glottis opens with our vocal folds, as we cough, breathe, sing, and speak, and you will see these structures opening and closing fairly rapidly during speech. Also, what we want to note is seeing more here, and I will zoom in on this area so I can discuss these structures, is the cartilages more posterior. We have at least two that we can see fairly well. At least one that shows up very well here is the cartilage coming off here, forming these horns, or the corniculate cartilages. The rest of the materials, we come down from the corniculate cartilages. You can see the arteroid cartilages, which are not on the structure sheet. The rest of the materials inside, or at least the arteroid cartilages, are on the structure sheets, and you can see them here, and they're quite visible under the corniculate cartilages. If I zoom out to look at this structure more in depth and open up the light in this area, you can see how these do open up, forming these structures, the vocal folds. The only structures that do not show up on this model are the vocal ligaments, the vocal folds here that cover the glottis as we go down into this hole for the glottis. To see some of the other things, we want to look at this slightly smaller yet quite detailed model. Focus in on this one. Again, we can see the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, the hyoid bone. Posteriorly, you can see cricoid cartilage continuing on here. We can see the epiglottis on this model, but it is not mobile. What makes this model so good for depicting some of these materials is that we can open this model up, and we can get in here and at least see vestibular ligament and some of the ligaments that are attaching the epiglottis here to the hyoid bone, but we can see in here at least our vestibular ligament on this model. And this is the only model that I'm aware of that depicts this structure coming through the opening into the glottis, down into the trachea, with the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, the cartilages of our throat, or the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, cartilage going down to the trachea, vestibular ligament, epiglottis. Again, seeing it from the outside even more prominently. So this model does do a very good job at depicting these structures in total. And as we can see, vestibular ligament here. The smaller models are the only ones that do that, and so I wanted to depict those as good as possible as I could on this video. And this concludes my video on the larynx. And continue to consult your structure sheets on studying these things, but having these models with you in a video should prove helpful. And this concludes my podcast.